I am sorry to have to tell you this, but blocking is a necessary evil and one that makes your crochet look the best it can be. So we kind of should do it 9 times out of 10 when we have finished a crochet jumper or a crochet shawl or scarf or whatever. I'm going to talk about the different methods of blocking our crochet. I am going to show you by getting down on my hands and knees and doing a makeshift demonstration about blocking crochet, and then also talk a little bit about the tools and equipment you might need or want to get your hands on, but you don't need everything straight away. So I'll talk you through the different ways of easy blocking, lazy blocking probably, because I'm an artist when it comes to cutting corners and being like the ultimate lazy person, but also getting a little bit more hardcore about blocking crochet as well. I'm one of those people that flies by the seat of their pants, so I'm going to wing it a little bit, but I do have notes as well. So hopefully I will cover all bases, but if I miss anything, please feel free to ask questions in the comment section. And then also I'm going to try and do a blog post too that I've been putting off for about 2 or 3 years because it's not necessarily the most exciting topic of conversation and it could be quite a dry blog post. So I'm going to try. I've been building myself up to write about it for a while, but we're not there yet. Just squeezing in an introduction here too, because I haven't done that yet. My name is Rosina and I'm a crochet designer and I live in the southwest of the UK. I am usually found on Instagram. I do have Facebook, but I'm rubbish at it. Find me on Pinterest as well for some good ideas. And don't forget to check out my other videos here on YouTube. And then I have my blog. Come and visit me on my blog. Loads of free patterns, loads more helpful blog posts about making the crochet the best it can be. All right, that's me done. That's the intro done. Back to blocking. I could assume that you kind of know what blocking is just because you're watching this and you've heard about it, you want to know more about it. But essentially blocking is using moisture, sometimes heat and a little bit of stretch to open up crochet stitches, set the stitches and kind of have them in their final state. Once you've finished all the hooky work, you then want to get rid of any wonkiness and just sort of generally create a beautiful drape and bloom in your crochet stitches. So that's what blocking is. You will accomplish that by washing it, steaming it, spritzing it with water, and then leaving it to dry. You've probably pinned it out, but if it's a big jumper, maybe the weight of the jumper itself is enough to kind of set it into its final resting place. For the most part, I am a blocking advocate for sure. There's definitely projects where you can get away with it. You are not going to go to prison if you don't block your crochet. However, why wouldn't you just spend a little bit of extra time just to make it that much better and look that much fabber? Fabber? Is that a word? Don't know. So, how do you do that? I'm going to show you some tools and I did film a while back a couple of little bits of video footage a few weeks ago about blocking this new jumper of mine called Fuzzy Duck. It's not out yet. It might be by the time you watch this, I don't know, but we are now March 2025 and I've just written up the pattern and it hasn't been tech edited or blocked yet. Tech edited or tested yet. See, blocking on the brain. But the video that I recorded not that long ago, I have blocked these pieces and I show you how I've done it. But don't expect professional levels of video footage. It's just me shuffling about on the floor, trying to get all the pieces on the blocking mats. So I don't know if you can see, but all of these stitches are lovely and uniform. There's a nice drape to it, not stiff fabric at all, nice and floaty light. and everything looks nice and even, yeah? So the footage of that will come in a minute. But before I get there, I also want to show you another project I have, because I've half done it, and I can show you pre-blocking and post-blocking so you can see the difference. And before we even get to that, let's talk about tools, crochet tools, blocking tools, things you need to block well. When I first started making the effort to block crochet projects, I think it was probably shawls first that I started blocking. I didn't have any fancy equipment at all, but I knew I wanted, especially in the shawls I was doing, they had lacy elements to them, and I wanted to make sure that the stitches weren't all bunched up and wrinkly like they were unblocked. I wanted to open up the lace work, and so I knew that blocking was a thing I had to do, and I winged it. I made it up as I went along. I wasn't really sure. I had a towel and I had some dressmaker's pins, and I used those, and I put the towel directly onto my bedroom floor carpet and just pinned everything out. I'm not suggesting you do this because you could ruin your carpet. If you had a fancy hand-dyed yarn, or even a non-fancy hand-dyed yarn, and the yarn was likely to bleed, you could stain your carpet. If you're using heat, you could you melt your carpet? I mean, that's pretty intense blocking if you're going to do that. But anyway, this is a caveat. This is saying maybe you shouldn't try this, but this is what I did when I first started blocking, because I didn't have any equipment. So I just laid a towel on the floor, and then I pinned out a shawl and let it dry. Now I have blocking mats, and blocking mats are advisable. Maybe there's a stepping stone of using a yoga mat. I've used a yoga mat to block before. I mean, I don't use it for yoga very much, so it makes sense. But I have these. I have I've got 8 of these, which I bought from a hardware shop, and they're just foam mats. I think these ones were, I think they were for gardening, but you can get them for kids' play rooms and stuff like that. And then they all lock together, and you've created yourself a surface upon which you can lay all your crochet. Whether or not you want to lay a towel on top as well, so that things dry quicker, you can do that. But sometimes I just don't bother, because you see all these little lines, they're very straight, and quite often I use those as my guide to making sure that I'm blocking everything in a nice straight line. You can get even better blocks than these ones that have proper grids on them, but I don't have those. So that was one of my first investments, alongside, I can't remember what the name of these pins are. Can you see those? These are blocking pins, and I have a couple of boxes of these. They've got fluff on them from blocking that jumper. So that was another investment, and I have a tin of pins. I wouldn't get ones with plastic heads, because if you're using steam, they'll melt. They could melt. So the actual blocking pins are probably the ones to go for. If you were to use dressmaker's pins, they could rust, so avoid those. You need the proper ones so you don't get rusty crochet. So a blocking mat and some pins, that would be your first step. Then you could go a bit more hardcore and get these, and this is not an affiliate thing or anything, this is just because I bought them, and I don't know what other brands do these knit blockers, but you have a box of these, so that instead of doing individual pins, you have multiple pins in one set, which, oh my god, I love them so much, because, well, look, such time savers. However, if you're blocking a jumper, quite often I've got 2 boxes of these, and I will use every single one. And if your project is even bigger and you're finding yourself chugging through those, So this is just some like duct tape stuck on the end because I lost the end, but on the other end it's got a lid. And I have some blocking wires, which are very bendy, so you can manipulate them into whatever shape you want to block your crochet in. So if you've got a crescent shawl, these are perfect, and you'll get a lovely rounded line on a crescent shawl. Really good, but not necessarily perfect for every single project, but these are invaluable, especially as like one of these can do the job of a multitude of pins. Again, a lovely time saver and a patience saver as well. Yeah. And the other thing I invested in, and it's like not a major investment, it was like £3, is a pool noodle, which I cut in half. I have 2 of these because when I have a cowl, something cylindrical, I can use this so that I don't get crease marks. If something is in the round and you can't like block the pieces, this will stop any crease marks when you lay something down. I think what I'll do is when I write my blog post, I'll have photographs of all these different methods. I'll try and sift through previous crochet patterns and designs I've made, because I think I've got some existing photos that I can share on that blog post. But yeah, these are really good. And then if you had a weird sleeve that you wanted to kind of like ease out some humply bumps on a sleeve, shove one of these inside the sleeve and then give it a little steam. It works wonders. I haven't melted it yet. I mean, I don't use them that often, but when I need them, they're really handy. And lastly, wool wash soap actually, for when you are washing. If you're doing the wet block method, then you'll want a little bit of soap detergent that's especially for wool, because we like that, a detergent that isn't going to blast through delicate fibres and whatnot. So some wool wash soap is the other thing you need. However, you might not need it. It depends on the method that you choose when blocking, because there are at least 3 that I know of and I've used. Wet blocking, which is where you wash your crochet fabric gently and squeeze out the water and then pin out to dry. There is steam blocking, when you pin it out and use a steamer or the steam function on your iron and go over your crochet with that to use the steam to set your stitches, or you pin it out and spritz your crochet with just like a misting thingy. So wet block, steam block, spritzing, I guess, are the 3 main methods. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten if there's another way of doing it. Wearing it, I suppose. And then it depends on the fibres, because if you're using acrylic, then I do know people just wash it in a normal cycle in the washing machine, and then a gentle tumble dry kind of sets an acrylic jumper quite nicely. However, another word of warning, which is test these things in swatches, because would you not rather ruin a swatch than a whole jumper where you spent hours and hours of work on it? Anytime you do a crochet project, whether or not it's a scarf, whether or not it's a full-blown crochet garment, do test the process on a swatch. I mean, if you're making a jumper, you are going to have made a swatch anyway, aren't you? You're going to have done that. So use that swatch, wash that swatch, block it in the same way that you intend to block the final thing, to see how the yarn behaves, because that you're going to use that for your gauge swatch to measure your stitches, right? So test that when when you've made it to see what blocking method is going to work best. Hopefully most patterns will advise what to do anyway, but you never know. And as always, these things come with practice and experience. So the more you block your crochet and the more methods you try, the more you get to know and the more you learn about it. And most of my knowledge has just come from like trial and error. I don't think I've ever royally messed something up by blocking it. I don't think so. Well, no, actually, tell a lie. Yes, I have. I once made a teeny little needle case out of crochet, just a simple, I think, like single crochet stitch in US terms, and that was made out of 100% acrylic. And I went to steam block it, and I melted the acrylic because I was using an iron at the time with the steam function, and I held it too close, and right in front of my eyes, the stitches melted and like pinged open. I ruined it. It was literally only a rectangular crochet about that big. So it wasn't like hours wasted, just, you know, half an hour probably of work. But it was a good one. It was a good one to witness, actually, because, yeah, rather that than like a giant thing. So test, check, please. Should we talk about those methods in a little bit more detail, each one by one? So let's talk about wet blocking first, because I think it's probably my favourite. It's the most effective, and I use it for projects where I'm using natural fibres, wool, alpaca and cotton sometimes. I don't often block cotton because I don't do very much that requires cotton yarn in a garment, apart from one I did recently, which I did wet block, and it creates a really good drape. However, wet blocking will create a lot of stretch, especially in things like cotton. I've seen online, doing my research, very diligent I was, but things like, some people don't like, they're frightened of blocking alpaca and mohair because alpaca has got an awful lot of drape in it, and it will go from one kind of look to a completely open, really relaxed fabric, and it can be quite surprising, the difference. However, I've blocked alpaca with wet blocking loads, and even mohair garments, like without, have I? Garments with mohair in them, absolutely fine. I've had no issues at all, no disasters. But yeah, wet blocking works best for natural fibres. It's arguably pointless for 100% acrylic, because acrylic will just ignore any of your efforts and not give a hoot about wet blocking and just stay as is. The way I do it is to fill up a basin in my bathroom with tepid, lukewarm water with a blob of wool wash soap. Swish it around, make sure it's not too hot or too soapy, and then I submerge my crochet bits. Leave it for about 10-15 minutes. I'm too lazy to leave it longer, and I don't think it needs it. Then I'll give it a rinse of clean water, not too hot again, and I won't zhuzh it. I won't mess with the yarn too much, the fabric too much, because I don't want it to felt. If you start agitating those fibres, then it could felt, it frightens a lot of people when they're blocking, and that's one of the concerns. So you just gently submerge it, leave it. You don't need to mess with it. When you take it out of the water, once it's been rinsed, just gently squeeze the excess water out of it without, no twist, because that will ruin it and overstretch it, potentially felt it and ruin it. Just gently squeeze. And then when you've got a massive project, my goodness, it can be really difficult and cumbersome. But you just have to be patient, go with it. In my laziest moments, I have balanced 2 tennis rackets over the bath and then just draped a really weighty jumper on top and kind of left it to drip dry for a bit before I actually then do a little bit of squeezing, just because it can be, oh God, I just want to wear my jumper. So then once you've squeezed it, I will lay it flat on a towel and place another towel on top. Roll it up, squish on it. I will stand on it, don't mind a gentle stomp before then it's ready for the blocking mats. So it's quite, I mean, it's quite an investment in time, isn't it, to do all of that, but it's just really, really worth it. The other two methods are a bit less intense in work efforts. So both steaming and the spritz block, all you would do is you wouldn't have to wash it at all, ignore all that stage. You pin out the dry crochet onto your blocking mats to the measurements of whatever pattern you're using. Because if you've done a gauge swatch, you know you've met gauge. So pin it out to the measurements of the pattern, and then either you get a steamer or the yarn spray. So you've pinned it out to the measurements, you're happy with how it looks. If you're not happy, just redo it, it's fine. Sometimes you might want to use a smoothing action to get everything nice and straight. And then you can either steam it gently, hold the steamer about that much above whatever it is you're blocking. Don't go close because that will be melt city. Or just like, even if you don't melt it, you could, if it's totally acrylic, you could still kill the fabric so that it just becomes really pathetic, quite frankly. So you just hold it about that far up, and then you steam it and leave it to dry. Once it's dry, woohoo, you're good to go. With the spraying one, just instead of the steamer, you just so that's me spraying water. You spray it all over your fabric. Don't be shy about the amount of water you use. You can use a decent amount. You want it to actually make a difference after all. That'll be absorbed into the yarn and then do its job of fixing and setting those stitches. So how does that work for an overview? You've got everything? Have I covered everything? Because what I'm going to do next is demonstrate. No, what I'm going to do next is show you a thing I blocked yesterday, and it's in two pieces, so I can show you blocked and unblocked. Luckily, I've made two versions as well in two different yarns, so this is going to be quite useful. First of all, I have, I think, an 80% acrylic, 20% wool yarn on a scarf that I've made. This scarf is called Disco Stitches, or the Disco Stitches Sampler. So this is what it looks like, and it looks all right. This is it unblocked. So it's not too bad, but it's got a bit of a curl there. Not too much wonk. I tried to keep my stitches as even as possible when I was working, but that's unblocked. And this is it blocked, and as you can see, it's got a better drape on it. I didn't aggressively block it. I didn't even pin down this edge at all because it's a ripple edge and I didn't want to block it out. If you're hardcore and you're going for it, you can block wonky stitches so that they're straight, and I didn't want that to happen, so I didn't put any pins down here. But you can see that the curl of that corner is gone. And again, yeah, this was just a sort of a gentle block. But you can't, I mean, it's because it's acrylic, I did steam block this one, but it has opened up those stitches a little bit. So if I hold them side by side, you get a better idea. Let's try and, there you go. So you can see that there's me peeking through. Here's I'm not gonna, I was going to do an impression, but I'm not going to. Sorry, I can't bring myself to do a shining impression. Anyway, if I'm holding them up like this, you can see the difference between blocked and unblocked, yeah? And I want it to look like this one, not like this one. So I steam blocked this one, and I'm going to steam block this one in a minute, and then I'll actually film that so you can see it. So that is 80%, I'm sure it's 80% acrylic and 20% wool. So I used the heat to fix the stitches in that one, and they're not going to curl up again. this is it now, and especially because I'm going to probably going to add some tassels on this as well, and that weight will also make sure that the scarf is nice and even stitches, and nice and flat and stuff like that. And this one is 100% merino yarn. Again, it has that curl. This is unblocked, obviously, and looks like this. It's not horrendous. It's never horrendous, but we can do better. We can make this tidier. So that's unblocked. And here we have the blocked one. It's got a bit more like nice drape to it. Like this is more floppity. And the stitches are more open. And oh gosh, there's some ends. Whoops. Oh no, that's where I'm going to sew. I'm going to sew them together. So this is the scarf comes. I make it in 2 pieces so that you can have these pretty ends with all the different samples of different stitches. But can you see the difference? Curly, not curly. And then what I'm going to do is get the other ends, stitch them together so that I've got a really long scarf and I can go like that. And this one I wet blocked, so I'll show you that as well in just a moment. I do want to give an honorary mention to granny blocking boards as well. I don't know where mine are, but I have 2. I've got a homemade granny blocking board, which is a square of wood about this big, and then it has holes at regular intervals where I can put little dowels, and so that when I make granny squares I can block my granny squares, and you can block multiple ones in one go as well on a little granny blocking board. And then I've got a smaller foam one that I got free with a magazine, and I don't know where that is. Oh, and another one made of MDF somewhere as well for granny squares. Do I know where any of them are? No, I don't, because I just don't use them actually. Turns out that when I do something with granny squares, I don't always block each individual granny square. If it was a massive blanket, for example, well, I've made 2 recently and they've sort of just blocked themselves under their very own weight. The only thing I need to pay attention to is probably blocking the border a little bit. I'll zhuzh it with steam, I reckon, and then that'll block out the corners. But one of those blankets I made over a year ago and I still haven't blocked it because, like I said, the weight of it itself, all those granny squares sewn together, as I've been spreading it on the bed, well, it looks absolutely fine. So yeah, don't tell anyone, but yeah, don't always block everything. Right, I am in my bathroom. I hope it's not too grotty. I can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm gonna cold, hot blob of this stuff. Wool wash, silk and wool this is. And then you zhuzh it for the scarf. That is plenty. And then shove it in. And if you want, gently submerge it. And then that is that bit. I could, if I wanted to, leave this, and actually I think I will. I'm going to leave this for 5-10 minutes and then I'll come back. Gently lifting it out of the sink because I'm just going to give it a quick rinse. I don't want it to be super soapy and slimy. Not that I use that much detergent. But I could also at this stage just do a gentle squeeze to get rid of some soap. I can leave that for another couple of minutes as well if I want to, and then As I said before, I think if it's a big garment, I would block it in pieces. If I have a choice, I'll block it in pieces. But a top-down raglan, you can't, can you? So if it was a big jumper, I would take it over to the bath and do it over the bath. It's just that much easier. Got more space in a tiny sink. There's so much water you can get out of this. But as you can see, I'm not twisting it. But I am a gentle squeeze, but not like... You need to give it a little bit of a proper squeeze, not just half effort. I'm gonna wrap it in a towel next. I no longer have anywhere that I can rig my phone, so I'm just going to hold it and hope for the best. But here is my setup, and for this one I do have a towel. Underneath that towel are my blocking mats. Here is my wash scarf. It's been seconds since I squished out the water. I've just rushed downstairs with a towel, and I am going to lay it out and roll it up. So here it is laid on the towel, and if you want you could fold the towel over that way and give it another layer of absorbency, but you just roll it up, excuse the socks, like that. And then we're going to very artistically squish, squish, squish. I don't know why I'm standing over here because there's no scarf over here. The scarf is under this bit. And then you do that for a bit. And then I'm just going to unravel it and pin it out. So they're both laid out on the blocking mat with the towel on it. This one is going to get pinned out and steamed. And I'm going to pin this one out, and it's now currently wet. And you can see they were kind of the same length before because it's the same pattern. And the wool, you can see, is stretched it so it's longer. It's also a bit thinner where it's stretched in length. It's gone thin. So I'm going to rectify that with the pinning. I could use blocking wires because it's lovely and straight line. However, because it's double knit, if I weave the wire in and out of it, it kind of, I think it might block in the weaving in and out holes of the blocking wire, if that makes sense. I think I use blocking wires mostly for more delicate yarns and lacy projects. And here I think pins are more beneficial because I won't get, and I won't block in where the blocking wires are sitting in this much, not chunky yarn, but double knit is enough to be manipulated by the wire themselves. So it's kind of like detrimental to it rather than benefiting it. I don't want to aggressively block my scarf. So all down here, I'm just going to pin without stretching, without pulling. I'm just going to pin, and the only thing I'm going to do is make sure I'm getting it in a straight line. So I don't particularly want to pull at this too much. So I'm going to be as gentle as I can. And then obviously if you did want to be really super aggressive, you'd start like pulling it and manipulating it and smoothing it out. And I might redo that end, it's messy. And then you just start, you could even stretch it. But if you do that, it becomes a different look. So I'm going to be as gentle as I can and not pull on it too much, just ensure that everything is sitting in a nice straight line. Isn't it an absolute bum when you notice at this very late stage that actually it wasn't dodgy end sewing, but you'd used a completely different stitch for about 2 inches of work? Oh my God, what a fool. I'm going to leave it because I don't care. Anyway, that will be at the back of the neck probably, as that will be the middle of the scarf once it's sewn together. So you can see, just pinning, using those blocking pin thingies all the way down. And I've not finished this end, so Excuse the camera wonk. I do apologise because I don't have anywhere to actually attach the tripod what's it to. But you would just place them where you think they need to go. And I have tried to like get this edge all straight down here. And then I'm going to do what I did with the other one, which is avoid pinning my wibbly ripple because I don't want that to go away. And instead, blindly she pins. Oh my God. Can't do it when I'm carrying a camera as well. And then just do it where and anywhere, pin out where you think it needs adjusting, pin out where you think it's a bit wonky. Yeah, and I'm going to do the same with this one, and then I'll get the steamer on as well. I'm armed with my steamer, and whilst I wait for it to do its magic, which won't take very long, you'll see that I've pinned out that one as well. If ever you're unhappy with anything and it doesn't look quite straight, you can pick out the pin, realign it and do it again. Sometimes it can take a bit longer than you want it to, but it's better to aim for sort of neatness at this stage and just, yeah, take a little bit of time to get it sorted. But there's nothing to say that you can't take all those pins out and do it again. Anyway, my steamer looks to be ready. So as this is acrylic, I am in danger of killing it. So I'm going to be very, very careful. And you just hold it a couple of inches above, and then don't spend too long in each section, but just gradually kind of move it downwards. And you can always do it again if you're not happy. And you just keep on going down and down and down and down and down and down and down. And we're going to do this until you've done the whole thing. And then you just leave it to dry. And I'll probably leave these overnight, and then tomorrow they'll be ready to sew to their partners, and then I'll have 2 new scarves. I am on 4 of my blocking mats that are squishy foam things. And yeah, I kneel down on the floor and I get my kit out, which is these pins, so that you don't have to do individual pin. You can just do however many that is in one fell swoop. And then if that is even too much, we can use blocking wires. These are short. The shorter blocking wires, you can get ones that are twice this long. Here is the tube that they come in. And so you get however many long blocking wires, and then you get the short ones as well. And I'm just going to use the short ones because I figured I could actually use them for the sleeves to even out the increases here, because I worked from the cuff to the upper bit of the sleeve, and to do so you increase, and these increases are a little bit kind of wonky just by the very nature of them. So I'll use these blocking wires to pin everything out and get away with using as fewer pins as possible because it's a bit of a faff. But I did start blocking this. This is the cowl neck of a new jumper that I'm making. I might actually undo these that I started, because then that was when the brainwave hit that I should be using these. So let's see how I get on. I'm not going to film it because I'll be busy pinning it all out, but I shall come back after the fact. And just to show you what I've started doing here is to weave this wire in and out of the end, the side of the sleeve. So you just kind of like poke it in and out and try and get the very end. Like, don't sort of do it like an inch in or anything. Do it as close to the edge as you can, and then you just kind of weave it in and out like that. And this is me just sort of, I've never watched any videos or read anything about how you do it properly, but this is just something I've just gone, yeah, that'll do. That's how I think I should do it. And it works. So I'm happy to continue going along with this method. So you just do that until you've got, you know, a bit of wire poking out at each end and everything's evenly done. So these are the short wires that I have woven in and out the side ends of my sleeve. Obviously when you finish your sleeve and you stitch it on your thing, it will fold over like that. This is an open sleeve. Now I'm going to pin it out using these pins here, but this means that I don't need to use as many of them because I can just like do one at the top, one in the middle, one at each end, and then I think that will be perfectly fine. What I haven't mentioned is that this is actually damp. I soaked this in warm soapy water. I used like you know, a wool wash detergent, just a splash, and then I soaked it for 10 minutes, rinsed it, squidged out the water, blotted it. What I should do is show you that bit. Should have done it for this jumper, totally forgot, so I'll find something else to demonstrate that with. But this is damp to the touch. If something is sort of uber damp, not soggy, because if it's soggy you need to have squished out that water, but if this is damper than you'd like, lay a towel first before you do this bit. I'm fairly confident that I've squished out enough water, blotted it out, that I'm just going to do it out flat. It'll be fine and it will dry in a day or two, especially if I put it over in that corner next to the old radiator. Sorry about the Nerf dart. I haven't tidied up, and strands of leftover wool, whoops, and probably dust bunnies. So if I leave it over there by the radiator, it'll dry in no time. I have pinned out all my pieces, and sorry, you do get to see the inner workings of my front room. But it's all blocked out, and the cat will sit on this. I try not to be too precious about the location because I don't have much choice in where I put things. So the children know now to be very careful too. This space I'm leaving for another thing I'm going to block, which I'll show you in a minute. But everything is blocked out now. The sleeves are over in the far end over there. The two, the back and the front of my new jumper are there. And then this is the cowl over here. It all fits nicely, giving me enough room to block my other thing. But if you look at what I've done here, I've used a mixture of things. So I've got a blocking wire going in the two long lengths of the cowl, and then intermittently the tension is being held with a few pins. There's no pins along here. You don't need them at regular intervals because the wire is doing the work for you. That's what they're there for. And it just means that you don't have to pin out. Otherwise, what you do is pin all along there to keep a straight edge, and that's quite a faff. Obviously, you can do that if you don't want to invest or can't invest in the wires. The wires I did not get for years and years until after I'd started crochet. I just couldn't afford, couldn't justify the cost of getting these, because they were, I mean, I don't know, nearly 30 quid for the little tube. These pins I think have got plastic heads, but because I'm not going to steam block this, there's going to be no heat going near this. I don't mind. These are cheap pins from like a pound shop or something like that, and I don't care about them. So far they've never rusted, so they must be is it stainless steel, which is pretty good. Otherwise yeah, because this is wet, you don't want to use normal pins because they will go rusty. But these are the real blocking pins. When you buy blocking pins, this is what they look like. Apart from then, you know, when you buy them, they're not bent. That's just because I've trodden on it or something like that when it's been on the floor. That's one of the hazards of this. I have blocked in my bedroom before, and then in the middle of the night gone for a wee and trodden on my project and bent all the pins. So this is what. These are actually the yellow-headed ones, the quilter's pins, so they're not. I tend to avoid using those because they're a bit rubbish and they bend even more easily. So the blocking pins are these ones, and then what you would do is use several of them and just pin them depending on the project. You could be pinning every centimetre or so, but you can see I could do with one here. if you're being precious about it. Sorry about the seasick camera wonk. There's one here anyway, but yeah. So I'll leave that all to dry for a couple of days, and then everything, all those stitches will set really nicely in a uniform way. There'll be a drape where there wasn't the same drape before. And then I will sew up all of those pieces and sew in the ends, because I find that it's easier to block before making the garment, because then if you were to make it pre-blocking, stitching it all together pre-blocking, the stitches you use, depending on what stitch you choose, might not stretch in the same way, and then it restricts any kind of growth in the fabric you've made. Therefore, if you block first and your stitches open and bloom, then you're stitching its true nature, if you know what I mean. And then nothing will be bunched up, and it will be a bit more kind of neater and tidier, I suppose. So anyway, yeah, I've got all of those pieces. And then if a pattern says to block to measurements, then you just sort of check what's the width of your garment, what is the length of your garment, taking note that there's no waistband here yet, so that could have an impact. But to be honest, I eyeball it most of the time. And then my sleeves over here with those blocking wires, and rather than waste is a strong word, but rather than sacrifice all of these beautiful pins to the wires, I've just gone with intermittent pins to hold the tension on the sleeves down the side, and then so I can use these where I need them, because I've got 2 boxes of these blocking pin things where they're all like together, and I always run out because I use so many of them, especially for one garment like this. You do, I mean, yeah, I've used a lot. This is a new cowl design I'm working on, and it's going onto the blocking mats dry. It's 100% merino double knit, and that means I could have wanted to, I could wash it in the same way that I've done that one in the wool wash warm water, but I'm too lazy, and it's just a cowl. I'm more inclined to properly wash and block a jumper made of natural fibres, a garment basically. If it's a garment made of natural fibres, I am way more inclined to block it properly by washing and leaving to dry in that manner than I am something like this. I can get away with just steam blocking it. Steam blocking is just as effective. Just as effective. It is effective for cowls. I'm happy to go. I don't have to kind of stretch it to fit certain measurements or anything like that. And just steam blocking will mean that the stitches even out enough. The drape changes to something that is going to be more realistic to the final product, if you will. So if this was made with 100% acrylic, do you know what? I probably wouldn't bother blocking it at all, because it's got a different behaviour, I suppose. But I could steam block acrylic, but I am reluctant to do so most of the time in case I melt it, or just kill the acrylic so it goes too flippity floppity and just sort of a bit lifeless. Steam blocking is good for wool acrylic blends, actually. So rather than, if I were to make a jumper out of an acrylic wool blend, I'm inclined to steam block it. So let's do that for this one. I'll show you my steamer and what I do and stuff like that. I tend to do a lot of smoothing and stretching with my hand and using these little griddy things if I can. You can get blocking boards that have grids on them, which are really helpful. I don't have any. I use the lines on these mats to try and make sure that my projects are actually nicely in line and not wonky. So what I do is a lot of smoothing like this, and then meet it, and then I'd have a pin in my right hand if it weren't holding a camera, and then I would just pop a pin in and then continually be smoothing it, as it were, until it was all pinned out. Because what I'm doing is I've done a blocking wire on this end, but on this end I was just like, I'll just use pins, it'll be all right. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And then I've already pinned down this side, and sometimes what will happen is I'll get to a certain point, like I've done 3 sides and then it's wonky, and I just unpin and I do again until I'm happy. I've pinned all along here. I don't know if you can see the pins. Pinned all along that edge and that edge. You can see them better over there. That other edge has got blocking wires, and this edge I've pinned it. And I'm happy with how it is. I haven't overstretched it, but it is stretched out a little bit, just by using that smoothing action. So I haven't sort of been aggressive. It's not aggressively blocked, which is a term that some people use for things like lace work. You sometimes have to really pull out the piece of work to open up the stitches and the lace work. But I'm not. None of this has been aggressively blocked. It's just been blocked normally. When it's all pinned out like this, you just hold your steamer down and zhuzh it all along. If you aren't going to steam a great deal, just use, if you've got a steam function on your iron, use that and hold the iron like that much above your work. And use the steamer on your iron. But I've got a doodah now, and it's a lot easier and a bit of fun actually as well. And I hope you can see. But what I do, hang on, I just hover it above and then kind of move up and down for a bit, and then move up and go up and down for a bit. Let the steam, it is coming out. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. And then just do that up and down, and then leave it to dry. I've gone over the whole thing there with the steamer. And yeah, I hovered above and zhuzhed it all up and down, so it was all done. You can sometimes see the wool, the yarn, react to the heat. So that gives you an indication that it is working, which is good. But that means, you know, that's a good sign that you don't want to touch the steamer to the fabric because you might ruin it. So do swatch first. Block a little swatch. Experiment. Make sure that whatever you're going to do isn't going to end up ruining hours and hours of your work. So if it was just like, just do a little square first. I am a swatch advocate. I do believe in swatching, I'm afraid. It is super important. So not just for things like measuring your gauge, but also for things like, is this device that I've got going to ruin everything I've done for the last 3 days, 3 weeks or whatever? So be careful and swatch. It is going to be damp now because obviously it's just had loads of steam shoved at it. So I'm going to just leave that to dry as well. It's not saturated, so it's not going to take as long as the sleeves over here, but just leave it until it's dry, then unpin, and then I would still leave it for another few hours at least, just so it can sort of relax. If you've pulled it quite tight, let it just relax into its final self before making any further like stitches, sewing, etc. The other form of blocking that you can do is spray blocking as well. So you would pin it out like this, same again, and then instead of using a steamer, just get yourself a mister full of water and just shush with water and leave that to dry. And then that is spray blocking. So you could use that as well on, and again, that works best on natural fibres rather than acrylic. So acrylic would be the steam blocker. I'm going to leave these now, probably hoping that they'll be done dry the end of tomorrow so that I can stitch them all together, but it might be the day after that I have to do them when I get back from work. They will soon become a jumper that I'm going to wear, and that will become a cowl that I'm definitely going to wear because I absolutely love it. So now I've made a mess of the front room, but that is fairly typical. And that's it. That's my take on blocking my crochet, and hopefully you've picked up some useful information. Do feel free to just like go your own way. Do it the way you think works for you. Like I said, it's trial and error. There may be things that I have just sort of taught myself that you think, well, that's not how I'd do it. Each to their own. It's perfectly okay. But I've had really good results from the way I do my blocking. And I hope that you now have the confidence and tools to give it a go yourself. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you found it useful. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and thumbs up. As regular viewers of my YouTube channel know, I am an irregular YouTuber these days. I don't do regular podcasts anymore, but I would love to come back more regularly in the future if time will allow. But I'm thinking more along the lines of videos like this, where I've actually got something to show you that's useful that you can use in your crochet, rather than just me doing a show and tell. I mean, I love doing a show and tell, but I don't always have time for that. Like, I want to provide you with something actually useful rather than a like, ta-da, look what I made. Let me know what you think about that. I'm hoping that I get some more ideas where I can come in and tell you about stuff, and then maybe some tutorials as well, because I'd like to be better at putting together tutorials, because usually, I mean, again, I wing it. So the only way to get better is to keep doing it, right? Anyway, I shall say goodbye to you now. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Cheerio, bye bye.